Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Katie Crysdale. Thanks for joining us. We do a little bit of a pre-show before the webinar starts in about 20 minutes with Maria Bella today. So let me know where you're from, what your name is, your facility, or your state. That's really nice for me to get to know who you are. Many of you I've seen before, some of you I haven't, so welcome if you're just joining us. We do, as I said, a bit of a pre-show. I share some different links that I'm working on, things that are going on, and I just want to see what's what. So good morning. Andrea is here from Vancouver, British Columbia. Let us know where you're from. Last night, I sent out my weekly subscriber email to my Lakeview Aquatic Consultants subscribers. So if you didn't get that and you would like to, I will pop the link in the chat box for our newsletter list. Really important that you guys know that participating in a POOLaide webinar does not automatically put you on that list. That would not be privacy or FOIP compliant here in Canada. I can't take your email address from a webinar and dump you on a subscriber list. So if that is something that you would like to get, I will pop the link in the chat box. I send a weekly newsletter during COVID, so during the coronavirus situation, and then it's only monthly during normal operations. So I'll just pop that link in the chat box. Welcome. I see Emma's here. Welcome from Reston, Virginia. I've been to Reston, actually. I've to Reston Town Center, which I'm sure is not all of Reston, but I have stopped there a few times to meet friends for dinner outside of DC when I've been in the area. Alana's here from Brillion, Wisconsin. Welcome. Angela's here from Oakland, Maryland. Angela is our winner. 2 weeks ago, the Canadian Red Cross kindly donated a free registration to their virtual aquatic conference tomorrow. It's for the province of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but it's really open to anyone. And Angela was the lucky winner of that free registration. So that is going to be tomorrow. And I'm actually doing a 1-hour session. I was super, super stressed about it because I'm talking about pools reopening after COVID. And when I proposed that topic last month, that seemed like such an obvious topic. But the amount of information that we have really has not changed or improved. I think we all thought in early April we would have some sort of conclusive information, conclusive direction about what the right thing is to do. So the long or the short of it is I'm really happy with the direction that my session has taken when I was working on it yesterday. But on Saturday night, when I was thinking about it, I was really freaking out because the initial direction didn't work. And as you guys know, with any sort of presentation or project, you kind of have to kill the original draft and then start over. And that's often better, but it can be very painful to throw out every idea, every source, everything you thought you were going to share, and then have nothing ready to go 3 days before a conference. But thankfully, the committee's been very understanding. We can deliver our slides much later. Given that it is a virtual conference, I can upload my PDF slides, tonight, tomorrow, and they're ready to go. So it's been really, really awesome. I'm excited. Evan's here from Cold Lake. Emma saying she's right near the Reston Town Center. I try. Names are so hard. Names, locations. I mean, I have butchered several places that I will not restate, but I've received direct messages. I've received Facebook messages. Believe me, I've butchered some names and some locations, and I've been schooled. Welcome. Julie's here from Perryville, Missouri. Julie is in the unique situation where her facility reopened today. So those of you wondering what on earth would you do, Julie is in your shoes today. So Julie, I don't know if you have anything you want to share in the chat box, or alternatively, if you have a microphone, we could hear from you. I'm just thinking about this in live time. I'm sorry, I should have asked you via email, but if you're interested, put your hand up and we can hear from you if you'd like via audio. But we wish you the best. It's definitely a challenge. I can't anticipate. You have the disinfectant ready. That's all you can do. Right? So wishing you the best of luck. So I've put in the chat box the newsletter sign up. Let me also go ahead and put in some of the new sessions that I've added. So those of you who've been with us before for these POOLaide webinars, we started back in March, and these sessions will be ending next Friday, May 22nd. So I've been really thrilled with all of the support that you guys have all provided to me and the community that we've built. That's not going to go away. I'm already exploring what the second version of POOLaide will look like, what the continuation will be. But certainly for the moment, I know that I'm getting tired. Other people are getting tired of attending Zoom calls and webinars, even recorded webinars. It's a lot of screen time. And so recognizing that the field is quite busy right now with different meetings and different committees and different conferences, I think it's time for me to take a step back, and I've done what I can do for the moment in terms of sessions that I want to cover. And I do have speakers that I had hoped to hear from or had hoped to ask them to present, and they weren't able to based on workload, right? Everybody, all of you, me too, like the workload the last 2 months has been insane. So it'll be nice to take a step back and then really rethink, what does this look like in the future, and how can we connect different aquatic professionals internationally in a meaningful way that's either free or still affordable in the future. So if you're just joining us, all of the webinar recordings for all of the sessions that we've had since March are on our YouTube channel. So let me go ahead and post that in the chat box. That is something that I also get a lot of messages about. People do not realize every webinar recording is on YouTube. So let me pin that right now in the chat box. So if you want to subscribe to us on YouTube, you can be notified when we publish or release new webinar recordings. Typically what that process looks like, for example, today with today's presenter, Maria Bella. So I will record the session, and then at the end of the meeting, I download the session. Today in particular, I have another meeting afterwards, so I won't get to it until later. But that's not the only thing I do. I then go back and I upload the session on YouTube. I update the show notes with timestamps for the pre-show, the presenter, the end of the presentation, the Q&A, the wrap-up. And then I go back to the blog post for each show, and I upload all of the links of everything that I've talked about. So whether you look at the show notes next Friday or 6 months from now, everything that the presenters, the speaker, the audience in the chat box has mentioned is cited in the show notes. That's really what takes me a long time, especially when we have these really detailed Q&As after the presentations, which I know you guys find so valuable, but it's a lot of linking. So I'm still working, for example, last Wednesday when Trevor Sherwood was here for May 6th, we have 2 hours and 12 minutes of content, and I'm only up to about minute 38. And you'd think it would be a little bit faster. I'm listening to the recording, I'm grabbing links, I'm putting them in the show notes, but I still have to visually check the chat box, and often people share things in the chat box. And so it's not an excuse or a complaint. I'm just letting you know that that's the process. So that's why it can sometimes take, I'm almost a week behind now on the different show notes, right? So that's what's happening. We do have the final sessions. They have been added for next week. So most of you know today we have a session with Maria Bella of Aqua Conscience. So really, really looking forward to hearing from Maria Bella. Wednesday, so 2 days from now, we have a session with my former colleague, Kira Maslach. She's going to be talking non-scary health and safety tips. So I'm sure most aquatic facilities right now are looking at their job hazard assessments, their safe work procedures, their onboarding, their protocols, all of that. She's not going to come from a specific Canada or US perspective. She's just going to talk generally about how to be more positive about your health and safety program. I know for me in aquatics, health and safety is in-service, staff training, that's easy. But then when it comes to the documentation side, that is not my favorite part. Kira is somebody I worked with for several years in the town of High River, and she's really, really low key is not the way to put it, but she's very relaxed and pragmatic and yep, let's just figure it out. Let's make it small chunks. Let's make it achievable. How are we going to do this? Getting it done. So I think you'll really enjoy Kira. Welcome, Clint from Eureka, Nevada. Jean's here from Massachusetts. If you're just joining us, let us know where you're from. Coming up on Friday this week, the next session, we only have a few more sessions. We're going to have Lisa Reinders. I worked for her for a number of years as well. She's going to talk about grants and funding. So same thing, we're not making it a specific Alberta or Canada or US, how to fill in the forms for this federal grant or this provincial grant. She's going to be talking generally about how you can take ideas or projects or concepts that you have and get them going with funding. So thinking about how can I perhaps, what other interest groups would be interested in funding my project, or who else should know about this, or how can I get buy-in for my project from my manager or from the community. So she's going to be talking very much about implementing projects. And I know nobody's going to have a surplus of time this summer to go out and start those projects, but it's definitely a skill set that I think more aquatic professionals need. How many of you are writing grants or proposals and you don't really know what you're doing? Okay, so Lisa has been involved as a community services director for many, many years in Alberta and British Columbia. She's now a consultant and she's been involved with new pools, skateboard parks, wind farms, solar panel farms. So she's been a great resource to me, and I think she'll have a great session. So welcome, Stephanie's here from Federal Way, Washington. Jamie's here from Coffeyville, Kansas. Welcome. So those are the sessions for this week. I'll put in the chat box the links for next week, which I've just released on our website as well. So a reminder that all of the webinar information, both past and future, is on the main page for the Lakeview Aquatic Consultants POOLaide webinar landing page. So let me pin this in the chat box. So before I had the link for YouTube for all of the recordings. If you're joining the show just now, you can scroll back in the chat box and see all of these links. So I had our YouTube channel where we release all of the recordings for all of the webinars as soon as the show notes are done. Currently in the chat box, I have pinned the main landing page for all of the webinars, past and future. So the difference is that you can see the individual show notes are all in one page, which is really nice. And I'm just going to announce the last 3 sessions that I've added because we will be finishing on Friday, May 22nd. We'll be going on hiatus. So I want to post those links. I've just, you guys get the sneak peek. The first announcement was made this morning at 9 a.m. my time. The next announcement comes up today at 3 p.m. Mountain and 7 p.m. Mountain for the last couple sessions, but I'll give you guys, for being here, the links right now. Welcome. I see Lori from Key West, Florida, Sherry from Portland, Texas, Ben from Waco. Welcome, welcome. So next week, we have some lovely ladies. They are going to be presenting on online in-service. They are from the, University of North Texas in Denton. They are providing a session on online in-service. And before you think, I don't need more online in-service, they're really taking the perspective of how are we going to use online in-service in the future. Okay, so not in COVID, not right now, not that you're sick of not having a swimming pool. How are we going to use online in-service, online meetings with our aquatic professionals in the future, with our lifeguards, with our swim instructors? I mean, if you think about it, for me, the big realization when I was chatting with them 2 weeks ago is, how many times have you had that guard that, they still live at home, or they're in university or college and they spend weekends at home and they don't plan their life accordingly and they forget about an in-service? So I'm not saying that we want to approve of that behavior, but getting together some employees or some aquatic staff on a Zoom call or on a webinar when they've missed an in-service, or they say, oh, darn, I can't make it in today. And you say, well, you know what? We can have you call in, right? How can that be a great alternative to ensure that your facility gets everyone that you need into staff training. So that is going to be a session next week. Just scrolling, I see Jose here from Dieppe, New Brunswick. Ben's here from Baylor. Lynn's saying she can't stick around, catch the show later. Absolutely agree with you. Maria Bella's material is amazing. If you haven't heard her speak before, you will really, really appreciate what she brings to the table. Elizabeth is here from Virginia, Barbara from Pittsburgh, Jennifer from Ohio, Maya from Spartanburg, South Carolina, Marilyn from Owen Sound, Sue from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Welcome. So that is Monday's session next week. The penultimate or the second last session next Wednesday, I just announced on our website. You'll see it on our Facebook page later today. Lady named Eileen Kwan, also from Canada. I've worked with her quite a bit, and she's excellent, like really, really excellent. She changed how I think about municipal budgets and budgeting and finance. So Wednesday's session next week, so our second last session, will be on budgets and the budget narrative post-COVID. So I've seen a lot of questions about, well, how do I change my budget? They've slashed my budget, or they're asking me to reduce my budget, or has there been budget savings because the pool's been closed? Has there been budget savings because of all the furloughs or the layoffs? But then on the flip side, revenue is going to be down for memberships. We can't ask members to pay for March and April. Admissions is down for drop-ins, or lesson revenue is down. Right now, we would be scooping up all that revenue from summer programs. What does that look like? So Eileen is going to talk in a general way about budgets and managing expectations post-COVID. She's not going to be here doing a finance session where she says, 10% of this category of your GL code should be this and 5% should be that. She's going to talk generally about guiding principles. I worked with her directly for 4 months and indirectly for 2.5 years. And as I said, she was a game changer for me in terms of understanding budgets. She helped me when I was involved with different capital projects. We did $500,000 in capital renovations. We would have to go to council for approvals, and her guidance was huge for me. I got so much from it. So I know any of you who are interested in getting better basic understanding of how to be responsible for your budgets and how to have those conversations for projects and commitments, I think you'll really, really like this session. And I'm so glad that she's agreed to present. She's another one of those reach presenters. So sometimes I asked people that I didn't think they would say yes, because it's just me and they're very busy people. But she did say yes. And I'm super, super grateful because she's going to be awesome. She's awesome. And then the last session will be with me. So Friday, May 22nd, I don't have a specific layout as of yet. We're going to do a big Q&A. Hello, I see Kim here from Hawkesbury, Saint-Saveur. Welcome. So next Friday, May 22nd, you can mark your calendar. That'll be the last live webinar recording. If you're just joining us, the POOLaide webinars will be going on hiatus next Friday, May 22nd. That will be the last day. We've been doing these for almost 2 months, and we recognize that it's quality, not quantity. There's a lot of webinars, there's a lot of recordings happening. You have a lot of competing interests for your time, and we've reached a point where we can only do what we want to do for right now. So we're going to take a break. I'm going to take a break for a week or two once I get through my 2 CPO classes. So we will give you a sneak peek next Friday what the future could look like, but we don't have a firm announcement at this stage. It will be up to you to check back with us either on our website or on our Facebook page in the future. If you want to stay updated, I will post those links in the chat box. So future announcements will continue to always be made on our Facebook page first. I know Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everybody has different preferences, but I do find Facebook super easy to update from my phone. So all major updates are always made from our Facebook page, the Lakeview Aquatic Consultants Facebook page. Welcome, Wendy. If you're just joining us, let us know where you're from, what you're up to, what's new. If this is your first webinar, welcome. If this is not your first welcome, if this is not your first webinar. Sorry, it's too early for me to get a tongue twister. This is not your first webinar. Thanks for joining us. I see Marcy here from High River, Matt from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Teresa, City of Hastings, Minnesota, Mary Beth, Virginia Beach, Shayla, Chambersburg, Beth Chandler, welcome. Sharon is here from Sarasota, Florida. Jeff is here from Cottage Grove, Minnesota. Welcome. Alyssa, Ebola Center near Fort Detrick, Maryland. Welcome. Steph is here from Casper, Wyoming. Caitlin from Shakopee, Minnesota. Gretna from Toronto. You got your stickers. Good. I've been feverishly writing all my envelopes for those of you that requested stickers. So please tag me in your Instagram posts, in your Facebook posts. If you get those stickers, I would love to see your face if you want to take a selfie, because I don't know what many of you look like. So welcome. I see Wendy's here from Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Cheryl from Duluth, Minnesota. Steph from Wyoming. Mike is here from Newtown, Pennsylvania. Welcome. So we will be starting in about 5 or 6 minutes. So I'm going to finish up what I was saying. Our presenter, Maria Bella, will start a minute or two after the hour. So continue to let us know in the chat box where you are from. That's always really nice for the presenters to get an idea of the audience. We have a huge audience today. We had over 360 registered. So I know that there's a lot of name recognition. A lot of you have either heard of Maria Bella, Aqua Conscience. Maybe you heard her speak at the AOAP conference in Frisco this February. Maybe you heard her speak at World Aquatic Health Conference back in October. That's where I heard her speak, and her session was amazing. There's very little that's new and fresh, unfortunately. I've been in aquatics a long time, and her session was really, really wonderful. There's a lot I think you're going to take from today's session if you haven't heard her speak before. So I want to finish up. I was mentioning a little bit earlier, the final session of the POOLaide webinars will be May 22nd. Did I put that in the chat box? I did. So the final webinar will be next Friday. I do have a small request. Those of you that are planning to attend or planning to listen later. So I did just discover an amazing website yesterday. Forgive me if I'm in the Stone Ages and you guys all know about Padlet. So let me pin this in the chat box. Padlet is a great kind of collaborative way that you can have different people work together on the same topic. So it was mentioned to me in my Canadian Red Cross committee meeting yesterday about doing a Padlet as an activity for youth for water safety and drowning prevention. We're working on some online programming. I'm a volunteer with the Canadian Red Cross. I'm a master instructor trainer. I do research for the WSITs. So I travel across Canada every second year and help with those. There's only 66 of us in Canada. Canada being a smaller country than the United States, the Canadian Red Cross Volunteer Corps is much smaller for swimming and water safety. Anyway, I've put a Padlet in the chat. If you guys can add to it over the next 2 weeks, for the final Friday, May 22nd show, I really want to talk about, I've had different questions about me, my aquatic background, different things that interest you about what I do or how I teach or I travel. If you have any specific questions, if you can pop them on the Padlet, it is entirely anonymous. You put together a little post-it. You can add links, you can add photos, and then people can vote or like on each other's topics. And I'm hopeful that I can address all of them in next week's Q&A and kind of sneak peek of what else is going on. But if I don't get to every topic, at least then I have an idea what else you guys want to hear about. So thank you to those of you who have completed the POOLaide webinar survey. I will pop that link in the chat box later. Not while Maria is presenting, but I'll pop it in the chat box. So if you have specific feedback about these webinars, that is welcome. But I'm also looking ahead to the future. And so the Padlet is nice for May 22nd for me to get a sense of what topics you guys would like me to cover, present, or just discuss and share about. So thanks, everyone. Katie Short, I knew you were going to know what Padlet was, and I was going to be in the Stone Ages not knowing what it is. I'm just scrolling back. I see Andrew's here from Loyalist Township, Sarah from Oklahoma City, Ben from Toronto, Colleen from Maine. Sorry, it's scrolling without me. Just a couple other names. We can see Maria Bella. Hello, welcome. So let me post the call-in numbers before we get started because that's something I also often forget. Let me post call-in numbers. So if you do need to leave us at any point during this session, you need to walk away from your computer, you can call in and use your phone on speaker and listen. The webinar recording will be posted. I'm a bit behind now, so probably 4 or 5 days, but you can catch that on our YouTube channel. Especially, I know a lot of people like to refer back and see what's been discussed. So the call-in numbers are in the chat box. You will need a participant PIN. And then let me also now go ahead and add in today's pre-stage show notes where you can find the slides. Maria Bella has provided slides. You can open those up in your browser. You will see that they are hosted on our website. So if you're the type of person that likes to, it's best that you follow along. The slides will go up shortly when I remove my camera. But basically, if you want to download them for future reference, she's got some excellent statistics in there. I think one of the things I particularly love about Maria's talk, to give you a bit of a sneak peek, is we really are missing the boat in this industry about non-fatal drownings. Some of you will know that we don't keep accurate statistics in many parts of the world about non-fatal drownings because they don't count, right? So I think that's a huge piece that we all need to be aware of. So let me start my introduction and then I will introduce our speaker and then we'll jump right in because we're expecting lots of people today. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Katie Crysdale. I'm from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants near Calgary, Alberta, Canada. My background is the same as yours. I started as a lifeguard, I worked my way up to a facility supervisor, and I ended my municipal career as an aquatic manager. For the last couple years, I've been doing consulting and training and teaching full time. And the reason I started these webinars during the coronavirus pandemic is because I really felt that there was an opportunity to bring people together in a different way. Now, 2 months later, an online call, an online webinar doesn't seem that interesting anymore. We've all been to hundreds or dozens of these calls and we're ready to go back to in-person. And so we will be going on hiatus next Friday, May 22nd. These are the last couple sessions that I've booked. And so I appreciate you being here today. I appreciate you watching this recording if you're watching it in the future. Thank you for your support by voting with your presence and your attendance. It means a lot to me and to our speaker. So I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Maria Bella. I heard her present, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, at the World Aquatic Health Conference back in Williamsburg, Virginia this past fall. So the World Aquatic Health Conference, if you're not familiar, it's a conference every October hosted by used to be the National Swimming Pool Foundation. Now it's known as the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance, phta.org. It is a merger of the National Swimming Pool Foundation from Colorado and the Association of Pool and Spa Professionals from Virginia. Long story short, I heard Maria's session and it blew my mind. Okay, so for many reasons that I hope you experience the same learnings today, there's many limitations to scanning, to zones, to silhouettes, and she's going to cover a lot of these things today. So I want to say a big thank you and welcome to Maria. Let's make sure we can hear your audio and I'll pull up the slides.
Good morning. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Well, I guess it's afternoon for some of us. So first of all, I want to say thank you for joining us today and being interested in this information that I have to share from my multi-year scientific study. But before I get started, I want to especially say thank you to Katie for bringing us together in this way, for creating POOLaide to keep all of us connected under very, very difficult circumstances. So again, thanks to everybody for being here. Before I get started sharing the data from this study, why drownings occur in pools with lifeguards on duty, I want to share some data from a prior study. Let's see if I can advance the slides here. There we go. This study was done by Doctors Pelletier and Gilchrist with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It was published in 2011. And what they attempted to do was to quantify the number of fatal drownings in pools with lifeguards on duty. One of the limitations of their study that they recognized was that because they were relying on media reports for their data, knowing that the media underreports the drownings that occur, they wanted everybody to be aware that their results, their numbers, underestimate the true number of fatalities in pools with lifeguards on duty. So an example of the limitations, again, when relying on media reports for data, in Washington State from 93 to 98, the media only reported about 50% of the drownings. When the victim is younger, the percentage of reported incidents go up, but we shouldn't expect it to ever reach 100%. But they knew during their study it did not, so please take that into consideration when you look at this number. Based on media reports, they were able to identify 140 fatal drownings in pools while lifeguards were on duty. I think one of the most interesting things that came out of this study was the fact that non-lifeguards, so other swimmers, bystanders, initially identified the fatal drowning victim twice as often as the lifeguards did. And when you stop to think about it, that actually makes sense, because when there is a fatality, typically that occurs because the lifeguard did not recognize the patron in distress. So if the lifeguard doesn't recognize the patron in distress, we're relying on other swimmers or bystanders to do so. And because they are not trained professionally to know what a drowning looks like, they'll often misinterpret a drowning victim as somebody just playing. So by the time that the non-professional recognizes that, hey, somebody might be in trouble and alerts the lifeguard, often several minutes have gone by. And at that point, it's not a rescue, it's a recovery. For a long time in the aquatics industry, we thought, well, the solution to this problem is just to limit patrons. So one lifeguard for every 25 patrons in the pool. That'll solve the problem. But in fact, Doctors Pelletier and Gilchrist study found that even when it was about half that, one lifeguard for every 13 patrons in the pool, we were still having fatalities in pools with lifeguards on duty. Now, as many of you probably already know, it's estimated that for every one fatal drowning, there are at least 4 additional non-fatal drownings that occur, 2 of which are treated and released from the hospital, and 2 of which require hospitalization. Mick and Sue Nelson, formerly with USA Swimming, continued the work of quantifying drownings. Now they looked at drownings and continue to gather data on drownings in all types of aquatic venues. I pulled from their data only the fatalities in US swimming pools and water parks with lifeguards on duty. So if you think back to Doctors Pelletier and Gilchrist, 2000 to 2008, 140 fatalities in pools with lifeguards on duty. 2009 to 2019, 137 fatalities in pools with lifeguards on duty. So we've made some changes and we're doing things differently, but we're not making a lot of progress in preventing these incidents from occurring. And I would posit that without changing what we are doing as an industry, fatal drownings and non-fatal drownings with morbidity will continue to occur at lifeguarded facilities. Now, Dr. Hunsaker and Mr. Davison also did a study, again, focusing on how lifeguards overlook victims. And it's a great study. It was published in the International Journal of Aquatic Research and Education. And I'm not going to go into that because you can certainly download it and read it, and it's well worth the read. But I bring it up because at the end of the study, they had some recommendations for additional subject areas of research, looking in part at the application of physics and visual physiology when investigating incidents in lifeguarded pools. And some of the things that they recommended in continuing studies was looking at the height of the lifeguard's chair, the use of polarized sunglasses by lifeguards, visual acuity of lifeguards, and the impact of zone size on lifeguard effectiveness. The data that I'm going to share with you now comes from a study that looked at 2 of those 4 issues: the height of the lifeguard's chair and the impact of zone size. Now, typically when we do studies in the aquatics industry or we do training of our lifeguards, we use mannequins and or silhouettes. And if you've done that, you've probably experienced the fact that even when we tell patrons, we put up signs and we let people know, hey, ignore that body at the bottom of the pool. It's just a doll. Some of our patrons, especially children, still find these lifelike tools disturbing. And because of that, they change how they use the pool. And that's a problem, because when we're doing a study to determine how line of sight obstructions and turbulence, as well as movement of the earth relative to the sun, etc., interfere with lifeguard effectiveness, and then we take away the patrons or the turbulence because they don't like our testing devices, we end up with a situation like we encountered here. That circle is around the mannequin that was placed at the bottom of the pool. And as much as we beg the patrons, please keep using the pool as you normally would, continue to swim and play in the area because we need that activity, they just wanted nothing to do with the mannequin. So it parted the ways. Of course, as soon as we took the mannequin out, they started using the entire pool again. We weren't the only ones that had this type of problem. I've spoken with aquatic facility directors who have told me that rather than risk offending the patrons by submerging mannequins or silhouettes when the pool is open, they'll wait and they'll do their testing after hours with maybe a dozen or 2 dozen lifeguards attempting to replicate the turbulence and obstructions created by hundreds of patrons. Other facilities forego simulating turbulence and the line of sight obstructions altogether, and they will do their testing when the pool is closed with nobody in the water. For example, testing in February for a pool that's only going to be open during the summer. And when testing is done in that manner, the results that are obtained are not reliable. Again, not only because of the line of sight obstructions and turbulence, but also because of the angle of the sun and the interference caused by glare. So we need to be able to test under real world conditions during the times that the pool is open, with patrons in the water doing the things that they normally would do. Because scientific testing requires that we're able to do this real world environment or have this real world environment. We need testing devices that are 3-dimensional and have contrast. And the reason for that is, if you think of the silhouette, this is a 2-dimensional object, and 2-dimensional objects decrease in surface area relative to angle as you get further and further away from them. So you can actually end up with false negative results. Also, because single color objects are less likely to be identified against a similar color background, you can again end up with false negative results. Now, we all know as aquatic industry professionals that refraction causes submerged bodies to break apart. This is why we train our lifeguards to look for blotches at the bottom of the pool. Don't actually look for a body, but look for an anomaly or a blotch at the bottom of the pool while you're scanning. What that means is that in reality, our testing devices do not have to be lifelike in shape, but they do need to be lifelike in size. The smallest person likely to drown in a public pool is a toddler. And I know from many of the drowning investigations that I've done that as children drown, when they stop struggling, they'll tuck into the fetal position. And that's how they can be found under the surface of the water or at the bottom of the pool. So in reality, the smallest target our lifeguards will ever have to identify is a toddler in the fetal position. So targets were constructed to anthropometrically represent that toddler in the fetal position, length, width, and height, without looking like a submerged child. And you can see the Timmy doll in the background tucked into a fetal position. But the difference between using a mannequin and using these targets is that patrons disregard these devices and continue to use the pool as they normally would. And here's a couple of pictures that give you an example of that. So this is testing done with, and these are known as Angels devices, which stands as area notification gear for effective lifeguard surveillance. So we put these in the pool and we let the patrons in, and of course we put up a sign letting them know that testing is going on. They don't care at all about these devices at the bottom of the pool, and we are able to gather reliable scientific data. When we put the Angels devices in, we put them on a grid in the bottom of the pool in one zone at a time. Now, if the facility tells us, hey, we use one lifeguard for the entire pool, then we'll lay the grid out throughout the entire pool. If they break it down for us and tell us, well, these are our zones, we'll set them up on the grid in each zone. And then we'll run our testing to determine what the lifeguard is able to see based on where their chair is located, whether they have a roving position. And we're also able then to, because we are testing throughout the entire day and multiple days throughout their operating season, we can see what happens based on natural light and artificial light and the effect that that has with glare on the surface of the water. Okay.
Thank you.
How about I go back? We'll go back to here. So when we perform testing, we put the Angels in the pool on a grid system based on the zone as identified by the aquatic facility operator. So if it's one lifeguard for the entire pool, we'll lay out the Angels on a grid system throughout the entire pool. Or if they have multiple lifeguards, we'll just test one zone at a time. And through this testing, we're able to determine what a lifeguard can see based on the chair height, the position of their stand or stands at the aquatic facility. And since we're doing the testing throughout the entire day, throughout the operating hours of the entire day and multiple times throughout their operating season, we're also able to see the effects caused by glare across the surface of the water, looking at both natural and artificial lighting. Now, when we do our study, we're actually running a double-blind study, a little bit different than a double-blinded study. A double-blind study in that we're gathering data from the lifeguards, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but we're also capturing images that we can then take back to the lab and analyze. And so I'm going to start with showing you some of these images. But let me explain a little bit how these are captured to begin with. We will set up 3 cameras on the same vertical axis at different heights based on the height of the lifeguard's eyes when sitting on different high chairs. So starting with what height chair they're using at their facility, we'll set up the first camera at the eye height as though they were sitting on that chair. And then we'll set up 2 more cameras at traditional lifeguard chair heights. So based on if they were sitting on the 6-foot tall lifeguard stand or the little bit taller 8-foot tall lifeguard stand. So again, all of these cameras are on the same vertical axis at different heights. We set the focal length to represent 20/20 vision and then release the camera shutters simultaneously. And these are some of the images that we capture. This first is from that lower stand. So right now you're getting exactly the view that this lifeguard would have. And if you take a look at the little girl who's looking directly at the camera, we didn't stage this, we were just very fortunate, but she's looking directly at the camera. She's got the black cap on and the goggles. And if you look at her, you can see her torso, but you can't see her legs beneath the surface of the water. However, you know that they're there because this is the way our bodies work. Our eyes are just cameras. They just capture information and it gets sent back to the brain that then the brain can analyze and interpret. And part of the way that the brain works is based on prior information. So even though we can't see her legs, we all know that there are legs underneath this young lady. So our brain just fills in the blanks. And that's all well and good, provided that we have something above the surface of the water, so our brain knows that something's there and then can fill in the blanks of what's below the surface of the water. But if the drowning victim is entirely under the surface of the water, that's a big problem. Now, this picture is taken from the exact same location, but with a lifeguard positioned on a 6-foot high chair. And you can see that this angle of view gives the lifeguard a better view of what's underneath the surface of the water. You can actually see the legs of the little girl under the surface of the water. And from the 8-foot high chair, even more clarity beneath the surface of the water. So in life, we say attitude is everything. In lifeguarding, it looks like angle is, if not everything, at least very important. But that's only one piece. Let's go back for just a second. And we look at this first image. There are actually 3 children swimming just below the surface of the water towards the rear of the image. Maybe you saw them in the 2nd and 3rd photographs from the 6- and 8-foot high chair. They're very, very, very difficult to see from the chair where the lifeguard was told to sit. Again, get the lifeguard up a little bit higher and you start to see the children. Even higher, again, a better angle of view, and the children become clearly visible. Even more importantly, their arms and legs become clearly visible. Now, we train lifeguards to evaluate arm and leg movement to determine if a patron is playing or struggling. If we're going to task lifeguards with that responsibility, we need to make sure that we've positioned them so that their eyes have the opportunity to capture enough data so the brain can accurately interpret that data. The next couple of images that I'm going to share with you, I chose based on a couple of investigations that I did in 2017, fatal drownings at pools with lifeguards on duty, not this pool, and two different pools, two different lifeguards, very similar fact pattern though. These drownings occurred during a lap swim. The lifeguard was positioned on a lower stand, 4 and 5 foot high stands at the two different pools. And they were tasked with looking across lane lines as part of their zone, as part of their surveillance area. Now, as you look at this image, I just want to remind you that you have an opportunity here that the lifeguard does not have. You can stare at this image and look for anything that seems kind of out of the ordinary. The lifeguard's eyes and head, by virtue of their training, have to be constantly moving as they're repeatedly scanning their zone. Now, this lifeguard who sits in this stand day after day and who's scanning this area is used to seeing a dark blotch on the other side of the lane line, the lane rope, caused by the tiled lane line installed at the bottom of the pool. So as the lifeguard's eyes are constantly moving, the head is constantly moving as he or she is scanning the pool, the dark blotch on the far side of the lane rope doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary. That blotch is not an anomaly. But when we put the lifeguard up a little bit higher, again, this is just an image taken from the exact same location, just a better angle of view because the lifeguard is up on a higher stand. We can see the arms and legs and also the color contrast. So we know that this is a patron, and with this angle of view, the lifeguard has the opportunity to know that that's a patron and also to observe the arms and legs of this child to determine if the child is playing or struggling. Now, in addition to capturing these pictures that we can take back to the lab and analyze, we also gather data from the lifeguards. We meet with them in advance of the testing and we explain what we're doing and how we're going to go about it. We make sure that they understand that this is not to catch them doing anything wrong. This is for their benefit to ensure that they are assigned properly sized zones based on where they're positioned. And then we perform our testing again throughout the entire operating day, multiple times throughout the season, and we gather data in one lifeguard zone at a time with a safety setup. So while we're doing the testing in that zone, there's an additional lifeguard there that is just focused on the patrons. Because focused on performing surveillance in that zone. Because as the lifeguards rotate through the zone, we're going to ask them, when they feel comfortable doing so, to count and tell us how many Angel's devices they can see in 3 dimensions. We don't want to know how many blotches they can see at the bottom of the pool. We want to know how many Angel's devices they can see in 3 dimensions. And then they report that to us and we just gather the data, the rotation continues, and we do this repeatedly. In this particular facility, based on the zone, we needed 25 Angel's devices to have our grid system set up. And as the lifeguards rotated through, they identified 19 to 21 Angel's devices in 3 dimensions. So at best, 84% of those Angel's devices were visible to them. In another facility, slightly different size, different shaped zone, we needed 33 Angel's devices to have them equidistantly placed in the grid, and the lifeguards there identified 21 to 27 Angels. Now, when we get done with the testing, we sit down with lifeguards and management and we talk about the results of the testing. And I don't think I will ever forget this roundtable discussion that we had afterwards, because when I told the staff at this facility that there were 33 Angels devices in that surveillance zone, you could have heard a pin drop, because immediately every lifeguard there realized that there were parts of the zone for which they would not be able to see patrons struggling. In fact, one of the lifeguards, an adult lifeguard, came up to me afterwards and said, I'm concerned that this might be happening at another facility that I work at. Could you please come do the testing there? So it was very distressing to the lifeguards when they found out that their zone was larger than they could actually clearly see. But this was not a nefarious act. Prior to the testing, neither the lifeguards nor management knew that there were problems here. And the nice thing about when we do testing is afterwards we were able to help the facilities position their lifeguards where they could be ensured that the lifeguards would be able to identify a submerged victim in any part of their assigned surveillance zone. And of course, we continued to test and make sure that that was the case under different operating conditions, different loading and different lighting conditions. But I don't want you to leave here thinking that chair height alone is the answer and just go out and buy a bunch of 8-foot tall chairs and go, okay, we're good. And I'll share these images with you and you'll understand why. So this first image was taken from the view of a roving lifeguard. And there's something here, but it's not possible for the roving lifeguard to know what that something is. Now in this zone, in addition to having a roving lifeguard, they also have a lifeguard seated on a 6-foot high stand. But even from that taller stand, better angle of view, it's not possible to see the arms or legs and determine if the splashing that's going on over there is due to play or struggle. So again, it's all about angle of view. And we can see here that the lifeguards got a very good angle of view. Even with activity going on, even with turbulence caused by these 3 patrons playing and moving about and splashing, the lifeguard can still see the arms and the legs below the surface of the water. That's about 40 feet from the lifeguard. And then over here where we've got a couple of bobbing heads, again, it's not possible for the lifeguard to know if those are just 2 people playing or potentially one person seeing another person drowning but not recognizing that it's a drowning, thinking that somebody's just playing. And the lifeguard is too far away and doesn't have a good enough angle of view to be able to determine that either. So a 2-dimensional view actually deprives the lifeguard of the ability to view the arms and legs and accurately analyze what's going on. But a 3-dimensional view gives the lifeguard enough information so that they can accurately determine if the patron's playing or struggling and needs assistance. And right here, that arrow is pointing to an Angel's device, which can be seen in 3 dimensions. We've got another one here. The Angel's device is visible in 3 dimensions. I'll tell you that there are Angel's devices throughout this pool in other areas. And we have found a direct correlation. When you can see an Angel's device in 3 dimensions, the lifeguard has a good 3-dimensional view of patrons. They can see below the surface of the water what the arms and legs of the patrons are doing. And where they don't have a good 3-dimensional view of the Angel's devices, they also don't have a good three-dimensional view of patrons. Now, the American National Standard for public swimming pools requires that when we have lifeguards, that they be positioned where those lifeguards can meet the 10-20 rule. And then that rule is defined as the lifeguard being positioned so that they can recognize an incident or trauma within 10 seconds of it beginning, and then respond to or get to that patron in distress within an additional 20 seconds. And this standard is put forth by all reputable lifeguarding organizations, whether it's referenced as the 10-20 rule or the 10-20 protection standard or the 30-second rule. The reason for this is because we are genetically engineered due to laryngospasms to keep water out of the lungs until we lose consciousness. Now, loss of consciousness due to oxygen deprivation takes a little over a minute. So if we get to a patron in distress in 30 seconds, yes, it's a drowning based on the definition, but it is a non-fatal drowning with no morbidity because the lifeguard was able to recognize and respond in a timely manner. Now, one of the things that I know, again, from many investigations that I've done, is that lifeguards are almost always blamed when a drowning victim isn't recognized in a timely manner. But the lifeguard is only doing what they're told to do, walking where they're told to walk or sitting where they're told to sit and scanning in the way that they've been taught to scan. Management is actually the ones responsible for the positioning and the ongoing training of those lifeguards. And this isn't my rule. This actually comes from the American Red Cross, and it's nothing new. This is from more than a decade ago. I would posit that instead of asking lifeguards, "Can you see?" it's time that we start asking lifeguards, "What can you see?" and making sure that we position them where they are able to clearly see below the surface of the water and have a good three-dimensional view of the patrons in their assigned surveillance zone. So now I'm going to give you the opportunity to be the lifeguard. There are Angel's devices placed on the bottom of this pool, and I want you to take a little bit of time here and count the number of Angel's devices that you can clearly see in 3 dimensions. Only count the ones that you can see in 3 dimensions. So I'll tell you that there are 30 Angel's devices in this zone. Now, if you did the thing, sometimes lifeguards will try to pull this trick and they'll just count the number across and then the number down and multiply it out. So we always leave 1 or 2 Angel's devices out of the grid, just so we can make sure that we're getting accurate data from the lifeguards. But I know exactly where these Angel's devices are positioned, and I can't see 30 Angel's devices in this zone. But again, this image was taken from the lifeguard stand at the height of the lifeguard's eyes, exactly where they were told to sit, and the Angel's devices were put in the zone as identified by the lifeguard supervisor. The Model Aquatic Health Code states that the aquatic facility owner shall ensure that glare conditions are assessed to determine if the aquatic venue bottom and objects in the pool are clearly visible throughout operating hours. It also puts some onus on the designers of the pool to address the problems with glare. This is obviously an indoor aquatic facility where a lot of the glare is coming from the windows along one wall. So they can do some things. They can add some shades or some tinting to the windows to help to cut that. But at outdoor facilities, we often use polarized sunglasses to help cut the glare. But without testing, we have no way of knowing how effective that effort is. And in fact, at this facility, neither the lifeguard nor the lifeguard supervisor or even the dean of this university recognized that this lifeguard was not properly positioned until we put the Angel's devices in the bottom of the pool and said, count, tell us how many you can see there in 3 dimensions. So again, sometimes the brain wants to fill in the blanks and we don't identify a true problem until we do accurate scientific testing. Now, lifeguards have to be positioned where they can recognize and respond to an emergency at all times, where they can easily observe patrons. Of course, lifeguards can't save what they can't see. And again, as upper management, we are responsible for ensuring that our lifeguards are positioned where they can recognize and respond to an emergency at any time. Testing needs to be completed regularly throughout the season under different loading and lighting conditions. So if there's swim team in the morning, testing needs to be done then. Swimming lessons mid-morning, testing should be performed then. Open swim in the afternoon, pool parties in the evening, whatever is going on, testing needs to be completed under all of these different loading conditions. If you are allowing camp groups into the pool, and you leave lane lines in the pool while the camp groups are in, you need to do the testing exactly under those conditions. You may be surprised at how big of a problem that can create. Now, one of the things that we know from other industries, as well as the aquatic industry, is that the most effective way to search an area is by following a grid pattern. And so testing should be done in a manner that reinforces that scanning technique. One of the things that we found when we did testing with the Angel's devices, and we asked the lifeguards again to count the number of Angel's devices that they can see in 3 dimensions throughout their entire zone, automatically the lifeguards start scanning in a consistent grid-like manner. We can watch their head move and their eyes move side to side through a grid, up and down, following the grid. But the interesting thing that happened, we didn't expect it. When we took the Angel's devices out of the bottom of the pool, we continued to see the lifeguards scan following a grid pattern, as though they had developed that muscle memory just by first working with the Angel's devices in the pool. In fact, I had one senior lifeguard come up to me and ram me in the ribs with her elbow and say, "Did you see that? Did you see that? This is a brand new lifeguard." And she's scanning so well after using the Angel's devices. So that was a nice side benefit we didn't know we were going to get out of it. The other thing that occurred from putting the Angel's devices in the pool is we found that it helped the lifeguards better identify what their surveillance zones were. So these are some drawings that were done by the lifeguards. Again, we meet with them before and after the testing. And the first 2 images, figures 2 and 3, were made by lifeguards prior to using the Angels devices. We just gave them a bird's eye view of their aquatic facility and said, draw the zones for us. Here's the black pen, draw zone number 1, pass it on to the next person. Here's the red pen, draw zone number 2, pass it on to the next person. And they did that, and then they turned in these zone charts to us, and you can see figures 2 and 3, there was some misunderstanding as to what the actual zones were, despite the fact that there was a chart hanging at this facility that showed the lifeguards what the zones were, and that chart was in the lifeguard office. So figures 2 and 3 done before the testing. Now during testing, we actually have the lifeguards put the Angels devices in the pool on a grid system. And we found that as they placed and removed those Angels devices, one zone at a time, they actually started internalizing accurate zone boundaries. And we found that out because we then had them do the drawings again after using the Angels devices, and figures 4 and 5 gave us that information. Again, we didn't know that that was going to happen. Just a nice benefit of the testing that we performed. And this was a consistent outcome that we saw. Of course, in order for our lifeguards to provide effective patron surveillance, they need to know what their zones are and scan consistently and repeatedly within those zones. Some others who have used the Angels devices shared some feedback with us. And for those of you that can't see the screen, that are just listening in, I'll read this. This is from the Assistant Director of Aquatics at Georgia Tech. She said, one of the best parts about the Angels is that it's pretty cut and dry when asking the guard or manager to count how many they can see. This system is also much faster than taking a CPR dummy and moving it from spot to spot, which was our previous method and was highly inefficient in comparison. Angels devices have been instrumental in providing a more tangible grasp on guard zones and stand placement. She also had a lot to say about how it helped them identify glare and combat some of the problems to minimize the glare at their aquatic facility. This comes from the manager at the Wyomissing Borough Pool. He says, we've been putting the Angels in at least once a week since we got them. We have several lifeguards put them in on a grid system, and we measure it out. With 4 to 5 lifeguards, it's probably about a 5-minute process. And we see a better response out of the lifeguards, as opposed to just scanning over the top of the surface. They're scanning the surface and below. And it's interesting because we've done testing with lifeguards, and before we put the Angels devices in, we see the lifeguards' heads just kind of bopping around, watching the patrons in the pool, counting the number of patrons in the pool. But again, after they use the Angels devices repeatedly, we see them then begin to scan in a consistent, grid-like manner, thoroughly throughout their zone. So some takeaways. Don't assume that lifeguards are properly positioned or zones are properly sized. Test repeatedly under various loading and lighting conditions. So throughout your entire operating day, multiple days throughout your season, and with all kinds of different activity going on in the pool. And then position the lifeguards so they're able to see over obstacles. They don't have the interference of glare, and their eyes can gather enough information for their brain to accurately analyze and determine if patrons are playing or struggling. And then make sure your lifeguards are trained to search every cubic foot of water in their zone repeatedly, that they're looking all of the way from the surface through to the bottom of the pool throughout their entire assigned surveillance zone. We'll take some questions now, but if something comes to mind later, feel free to email me. Just make sure you get that hyphen in between aqua and conscience so it gets to me. Or you can call the office, or that's my mobile number on the screen. Feel free to call me directly. I would just ask that if you send me an email or you call and you leave a voicemail and I don't get back to you within 2 business days, assume technology failed us. It does that every once in a while. So please reach out to me again. And then if you want more information, you can go to this website, safetythroughscience.com, for additional info.
Thank you so much, Maria. We'll leave that screen up for a few minutes so people can grab your information. I've also linked in the chat box Maria Bella's website, Aqua Conscience. I linked in the chat box before. You can specifically see the products linked right now. Maria, maybe you could start by just distinguishing for people the two products available on your website. There's one with angels, one that's a different product. Could you explain the two?
Yeah, I sure could. And I should probably do full disclosure here. That's not actually my website. I'm not selling anything. I'm just a researcher. There were some individuals who became aware of these devices as I was doing my study, and they, no pun intended, are angel investors, and they decided to start a company based on this to make it available to other people. They sell two products. They sell an auditor's kit, which is 7 angels that can be taken out and used just to identify the zone, the periphery of the zone, to make sure that zones are properly sized. And then they sell the lifeguard positioning and training tool, which is a set of 35 angels, which allows the facility operators to not only identify zones, but then also to train their lifeguards to scan following a grid pattern.
Perfect. I want to get to a couple questions we had while you were presenting, Maria. Let me just click. I have them written down. One moment. I know a lot of people's brains are currently exploding because they're thinking of everything they now want to add to their infinite to-do list, unfortunately. So that this session does have a positive way of informing us about some of the deficiencies that we might have in our facility. Kate from Ohio asked, in your experience, do you find how does the increased height of the lifeguard chair affect the visibility looking straight down or up against the wall immediately in front of the chair?
That's a great question. And I'm going to say it depends on the placement of the lifeguard stand. Regardless of the height of the stand, that stand actually needs to be right up at the edge of the pool, and placed so that the lifeguard can look straight down below and see directly along the front edge of the pool. One of the problems that I have with some of the stands out there that have the steps on the front of the stand, it pushes the stand back from the edge of the swimming pool. And that is a big problem, because once you get the stand back from the edge of the swimming pool, there's going to be a blind spot created by the obstruction of the wall. So lifeguard stands need to be positioned so that the lifeguard's eyes can look over the front of the stand and directly down along the wall of the pool.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point that a lot of people are not considering. Let me go to Ben's question, and then Lauren, I see your question. Ben was asking what your thoughts are on having making mandatory to have higher stands or stance of lifeguard chairs. Do you think this would help reduce drowning occurrences? What are some of the potential risks, health and safety to the guards climbing up to a higher chair or position?
A lot of good questions there. So I don't think mandating certain heights of chairs is necessarily the answer, because there are facilities that are designed in such a manner that we need to have roving lifeguards. You know, we put a lot of play structures in our aquatic facilities now, and in order to be able to see around those play structures, we need the lifeguards to be able to move. Making sure that we don't assign them zones, though, that are too large is critically important. So I think that answers the first half of the question. I'm sorry, what was the second half?
The risk, the health and safety concerns, like, if you're on an 8-foot stand versus a 2-foot stand, had you seen any data for commensurately more injuries or other risks, or, to that point?
Sure. Again, a really good question. It's important that we train our lifeguards to not jump off of tall stands, either down to the ground or into shallow water. And in fact, that's part of the reason that we have so many low lifeguard stands now, is because one of the things the industry has done to address the drowning epidemic is gone to shallower pools. And when they went to shallower pools, they went to lower stands, not recognizing how much that affects the lifeguard's angle of view. So if I have lifeguards and I put them in high stands, I'm going to want to make sure a couple of things. I want to make sure every day that those stands are in good condition, that they're properly cleaned so that lifeguards can climb up and down without slipping and falling, and that they're easy for the lifeguards to get up and down from. I think the other thing that's really important to keep in mind is when a drowning occurs, and unfortunately I know this, when I do drowning investigations, I see a lot of security video. So I watch, unfortunately, many drownings every year. And one of the things that I can tell you is that the drowning victim does not move a long distance as they're struggling in the water. They stay in relatively the same area. So there's time for a lifeguard to safely get down off of a taller stand, and that drowning victim is going to be relatively in the same place that they were when the lifeguard was looking from the tall stand. So this is a training aspect. Put them in the right position so that they can see, but because if they can't see and they can't identify, well, nothing good is going to come out of that. But then train them to go up and down the stand properly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love your point about the way the industry has shifted. I think some of us have lived through this shift and some of us are not aware of the shift. So when I started, 15 years ago at a university college pool, we had 8-foot stands on a 50-meter pool. We were trained to jump off of them. And whether that was right or wrong, the vantage point that provided to me has always informed a lot of the way I train lifeguards now. Not that they're going to be in 8-foot stands, but I think there's a lot of newer lifeguards, newer lifeguard instructors that have never been at that height to really appreciate how your vision permeates the water column and some of the limitations of the shorter stands. We talked last week a little bit when Trevor Sherwood was here, an expert witness. We talked about the video, I'll pop it in the chat box, a series of unfortunate events. That security footage is very easy to see. There's a seated lifeguard maybe 1.5 feet off the deck, and the vantage point, there's no way the vantage point could have been clear for them to truly see the child who was underwater for almost 8 minutes, right? Like it's very difficult. Could you comment a little bit in your experience, Maria? Are you noticing in the United States a complete flip to roving or walking lifeguards? That seems to be the obsession right now in Alberta, that walking is somehow better than seated.
Right. So yes and no. I started to see a shift to that, and now I'm seeing less of that. We're starting to put lifeguards back in stands, but unfortunately not in tall enough stands. So every time the industry does something new, like going to shallow water, or now with play features just about every place you go, we're as lifeguard instructors or lifeguard supervisors, lifeguard managers, trying to catch up and trying to come up with ways to mitigate these designed-in hazards. So in part, we need the designers to get on board with us and build facilities that can be properly guarded without having all foot patrols, because then they make the pool so wide that even if you put lifeguards on each side, they don't have a good angle of view all the way to the center.
Yeah, there's so many, as you know, as a designer, there's so many things that they do. They put columns in the middle of the basin. They put all these things that are not helpful to us as lifeguards. Lauren was asking a little bit earlier, do you have data, or was it in the journal there was data regarding polarized lenses impacting the visual acuity of lifeguards? Because that's also been one. I've had some facility managers tell me they don't like polarized lenses because they're worried their staff are going to sleep behind them, right?
Sure. So one of the things that was recommended in the article that was published in the journal was a study looking at the use of polarized lenses. We started to do that in years 4 and 5 of our study, started collecting data, literally comparing non-polarized versus polarized lenses. We don't have enough data yet to share that with you, but that's something that we have looked into. I don't know anybody else who's done that study yet. So,
okay, so it has resources. Yeah, please in the chat. If anyone has any resources, I added IJER before I heard it's not IJER, but if anyone has any concrete data, resources, I know Polaroid is one of those ones that's been, again, for some reason, very contentious in my area for indoor pools, especially, even though I've said to the individuals who've said, well, what if my guard sleeps? Well, you have a bigger issue than a polarized lens than if you think your guards are going to be sleeping, right? In terms of trust or competency. I think if you have a lot of indoor windows, that was discussed as well while you were presenting, Maria. So many pools now, we love the light of indoor windows, but I particularly added to the chat box, for those of us in northern climates of Canada, the sunlight, the seasons is so different between winter and summer, 6 a.m. in different times of the year. And I love that you said, we really need to be checking these zones often, because I think there's a stagnant way that people think the zone is set, and they consider multiple guards on shift or multiple types of swims happening, but they don't consider the seasons, the lighting, the height. There's so much that goes into that.
Yeah, there really is. It's a complex problem.
So I think we'll take any last couple questions in the chat box, but we'll wait a minute or two to see if any come in. Maria, if we're thinking about reopening our facilities in, let's say, 1 month or 2 months, and we're realizing that our zones are inadequate and that we have a lot of work to do in this area, what are some quick, short recommendations you would make to people now in terms of either notifying staff or having a short meeting to get people thinking, okay, we can't throw all the zones out right now. We need to make improvements, but what can we do in the immediate future?
Well, I would recommend that you go to the website, the safetythroughscience.com, and just look at the data that's available there. There are several different. There's a link for parents, a link for the lifeguards, a link for the lifeguard managers. But click on each of those links and scroll through those and gather as much data as you can, because a lot of information was put there with the intention of just informing people. And then as you have more information, taking it back and adapting it and applying it to your facility is really what this is all about.
Awesome. I'm just going to pop a link in the chat box. I'm just looking at my last couple of questions. I do agree with what you've said repeatedly, that there is just a general lack of understanding, even in training new guards, about what is the zone, right? We put a map on the wall, we put it in the staff manual, and then we never talk about it in service. We never do a test to make sure, verbally doing a perception check. Hey, Maria, are you covering the slide or am I covering the slide? That's never something that is done in a pre-shift meeting. That's never something that's done. And we really need to, I think, consider what you've shown us in the data and some of the risks we have with that complacency. So do you have any final thoughts, Maria, you'd like to share?
Well, I think bringing up the zone issue is really important. I see lifeguards too often. They get up on the stand, there's multiple lifeguards, and they're looking out. Each of them is trying to survey a zone that's way too big. They can't do it effectively. So making sure that they know, hey, this is my zone, and I'm going to scan this area repeatedly. I'm not going to be distracted by things happening in other zones. I am responsible for this box of water in this area of the pool, all of the way from the surface to the bottom. That will go a long way to helping address this problem. So to your point, not only looking at it on the image, but test on it. You know, can you drop properly? Can you get out in the water and stand at perimeter of your zone? Do you really know where it is? And then are you scanning that thoroughly and consistently?
And I love what you said too, that our eyes, they fill in the blanks. So if I see a human and I can't see the legs, I tell my brain there's legs there, I just can't see them. And so then I file it away, that I don't need to worry about that person. And that makes me wonder too about what other blanks are we filling in. We are both deluding our brain and perhaps lying to ourselves internally. We think we can see something because we know that Mrs. Smith is always over there doing her water stretches. And then what are some of the potential concerns when we start doing that with any patron or any client, right? And then it's not the behavior that we expected, and then there's a drowning and we don't catch it.
Exactly, exactly. So, or we get up on those stands before patrons are in the pool and we look around and go, I can see the tile lines at the bottom of the pool. I can see the tee on the wall. I'm good to go. But you get patrons in the water, you get turbulence, you get line of sight obstructions. Again, the earth moves relative to the sun, you've got different glare, and all of a sudden, your brain's still filling in those blanks because it saw it earlier, but your eyes can't really see it now.
Yeah, I saw a really great exercise. Joey Rusnak from Lifeguard Authority, he invited me to an in-service 2 years ago, and they did a really cool thing. They were working on their zones to update them. They had a staff member already changed in a bathing suit, and the whole half hour, he just went back and forth in different directions, flutter kicking in directions that they wanted to test out glare and water, like broken water movement over objects. And then somebody else had a fire hose ready to go, and they were playing around with different spray, the way the water interacted on the surface to see, okay, well, the guard is here, they can see up to this edge. What if we move them over here? What, like literally testing out different zones and mapping out, okay, this was in February in Canada in a facility with a lot of winter light coming in through the windows, like a kind of warm light, but it wasn't very penetrating light. So just very, very interesting even there to consider. Get someone to flutter kick and get someone to pull out a hose, and that'll better inform one way we might do zones. And then maybe you don't want 7 different types of zones depending on the shift, but maybe there's seasonal zones, right? That's not unreasonable.
Right, exactly so, exactly so. But the thing is, test. If you don't test, you're not going to know. And if you assume, hey, those lifeguard stands are there, they've always been there, that's good, we've never had a drowning, you know, you're really relying on being lucky, and I don't want to trust life to luck.
No, I completely agree. That's one of the worst, most nefarious ways in aquatics. You know, that's the way we've always done it. And I think it's even just with new guards, when you bring on new guards and if you give them the opportunity to say, hey, you're new to this facility, where would you like to guard based on this being your first shift or your shadow shift? I've had great feedback from staff that way saying, well, I don't want to stand there because I am shorter and I'm taller, right? Like, so I'm 5'10". If I have a 5'2" lifeguard, she might select a different position, right? So they should tell me perhaps, you know, let's try out some different positions. You tell me where you think you have the best vantage point, and that's a good conversation.
Sure, sure. But again, with some kind of testing device so they know, can I see in 3 dimensions from that position?
Absolutely agree. Okay, well, let's say thank you to Maria. Thank you so much for the information. I love the data. I love the research. I think that should underpin more of what we do, and showing, I think, really identifying that the silhouette, as you said early on, kids don't want to touch it. They don't want to swim over it. And it creates an unreasonable expectation that it's really accurate to the pool conditions, whereas the Angel device or any other solution that allows you to be a little bit more accurate with testing is ultimately going to result in better guards and better safety. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. And again, thank you, Katie, for putting this together. I think it's just fabulous.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll let you go, Maria. I'll do a few announcements so you can stay or just turn off your camera. I'll do a couple announcements for the remaining sessions.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. So I've added in the chat box the video I mentioned. We discussed it last week as well. A series of unfortunate events shows a really great example of video footage where there is a lifeguard at a lower level stand. So a couple of reminders, POOLaide webinars will be finishing next Friday, May 22nd. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat box our next couple of links. So on Wednesday, 2 days from now, we have a health and safety session. It's speaking generally, not Canada, US specific, but generally, how can you work on your health and safety regimen? So your documentation, your job hazard assessments, your safe work procedures in an accessible way, a non-scary way. Because I know for me, that was like next to staff scheduling in terms of things that I don't like doing. On Friday this week, we have somebody here to talk about grants and funding aquatic projects. Same thing, it's not an Alberta or Ontario or Pennsylvania specific what funds to get and how to fill them out, but speaking generally about how we as aquatic professionals can look for funding sources for our projects, finding collaborators, finding partners. How can we be better equipped? Because I don't know about you, but I've had times where my boss said, here's a grant, go apply for it. And then what, right? That's not my background. I don't have a finance background. How do I apply for a grant? Okay, so she's going to talk generally about grants. Our last couple sessions have been announced on our Facebook page today, the announcements, as well as on our website. So Monday, May 18th, we're going to have the University of North Texas at Denton. 2 ladies are going to be presenting on online in-service with a focus to the future. So not now during COVID, but really looking at how we can continue to use this skill set in the future. I mentioned a little bit during the pre-show, maybe that's how you wrap up your staff that are missing a specific session, or maybe that's how you communicate information faster by having a web meeting. They're going to be really sharing their specific strategies that they've been doing throughout COVID and how it can be applied going forward, because I don't think aquatics will ever be the same, right? We are usually at the edge of the industry in terms of, using Kahoot, using games, using Mentimeter, using Padlet, all these cool apps. We're at the forefront in aquatics of new innovative ways to engage with youth. But we've probably not been innovative in terms of our meetings. We're so focused on in-person meetings. And I don't disagree that getting back in the pool and doing in-service will be critical, but how can we use online in-service in the future? They're going to be discussing that next Monday. Wednesday, May 20th, it's going to be budget narratives post-COVID. So again, not a municipal or regional specific, but how can you, in preparation for post-COVID, really work to make sure that your budget and your goals for your aquatic facility are met? So Eileen, I worked for her directly for 4 months and indirectly for 2.5 years. She was amazing for me when I was learning about finance and budgeting for facilities. She's going to talk about process. So having conversations to get commitments and action for results. So again, how can you a little bit create that buy-in, but also create that action in the context that post-COVID, a lot of us are going to have our budgets reduced. A lot of us have lost revenue. A lot of us have a bleak financial outlook for our facilities. And it's not only speaking to COVID, but generally she is going to talk about some of the other things coming out of this, how we can use this opportunity to be better prepared with a little bit of training before your boss or your aquatic director says, hey, we have to cut 25% of the budget next week, right? I don't know about you, but those were always kind of last minute requests and I was just guessing, right? I didn't know what I was doing. Next Friday, May 22nd, will be the last call with me. So we're going on hiatus. POOLaide will be continuing in the future in a different format. I'll be giving a bit of a sneak peek what I think that will look like. I haven't decided for sure next Friday. Next Friday will be primarily me and then doing a Q&A. So I would ask that if you have questions for me, not about COVID or facilities or webinars, but if you have any questions about me, I'm going to address, I've had some DMs about my background and my story. I would ask that you fill in the Padlet. So Padlet is a free website. I've just pinned it in the chat box. You can put little post-it notes, messages, links, any questions that you have. It's completely anonymous. That will give me an idea of the direction I want to go next Friday. Definitely some questions I've had that I'll answer, but also I want to make it open to you guys and what you want to hear and what you want to discuss in this kind of final session, whether you want to have more sharing from other facilities, whether you want to have kind of situation updates from different parts of North America or the world. It's kind of open-ended right now, so please leave a comment on the Padlet letting me know what you'd like to hear. A reminder, the show notes for today, it'll take me a few days to get updated. I'm not as on the ball as I've been recently. All of the recordings are on YouTube, so you can follow us on YouTube to catch those recordings when they are released. Oh, I know, my Alberta friends. If you're in Alberta, we will be having the Alberta Association of Aquatic Professionals meeting. It starts in 45 minutes, so let me post that link in the chat box. If you are not registered, if you did not get the email from Lisa, you can enroll in the AAAP meeting that's happening at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. You can click the bit.ly link that I've posted in the chat box. Anybody is welcome to attend, but prizes are only going to our Alberta residents. The last thing I'm going to post in the chat box before I take any questions, anybody who is still here, is we do have the POOLaide webinar survey. So I'm just going to grab the link for that, one moment. And that is where you can provide me feedback on any of these surveys, anything you'd like to see in the future for this survey, for this webinar series. So the SurveyMonkey link is in the chat box. It is anonymous, so any feedback, good or bad, I like to hear it. Any pain points, any resources, things that you'd like addressed, please feel free to post those anonymously in the survey. Thank you, Cheryl, for your feedback. I'm glad that you found this series beneficial. It's really been great, the networking as well. So those of you that haven't been on earlier webinars, we do have an internal networking document. I can put that in the chat as well. So those of you that are interested in connecting with other people in your location nearby, we do have a Google Doc. I put this in the chat box. It's a networking directory where you can put your contact information on the geographic page for your area. So please note at the bottom of the page, there are different tabs for Western Canada, Eastern Canada, Maritimes, New England, Southwest US, Pacific Northwest. Find your section, and if you want to connect with anybody in your area, you can do so through the networking directory. That document will be live for about 1 more month, and then we will take it down and save a PDF. We don't want to leave it just open forever. But if you do want to network with anyone, you can pop your contact information in there. We did the sticker giveaway last week. So if you requested stickers, I am still working on those. That sticker sign up was in the chat box. If you need me to repost it, I will. That's kind of our last call for stickers. Any other questions or comments? I will be here for a few more minutes. Thank you to those of you that spent part of your Monday, is today Monday? Monday, May 11th with us. It's been great. We had over 240 people here, so that's huge for a Monday. Mondays are a wreck for many people. So thank you for being here. If you need anything else, let me know. I'll be in the chat box for a few more minutes. Thank you, Jose, for your time. Oh, I'm excited. You're registered for the virtual Saskatchewan and Manitoba Aquatic Conference. I can also post that in the chat box. That is taking place tomorrow. It is online. $70 Canadian gets you access to all of the sessions for 2 days, as well as recordings. So I look forward to connecting with you tomorrow, Jose. I was saying in my Instagram stories this morning, it's a crazy week because we've got POOLaide Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I've got another meeting I'm hosting in about 45 minutes. We've got 100 people across Alberta for our provincial meeting. I'm just hosting that meeting. And then tomorrow is the conference, so hoping to attend most of the sessions tomorrow. The conference link, whoops, I put the wrong link, 1 second. Let me put the conference link in the box for tomorrow. So the Canadian Red Cross, the ticket spice, that is the registration if you're interested in joining us. My session tomorrow is called Your Pool Post-COVID. I gave a little bit of a sneak peek during the pre-show, but basically my session is going to be a little bit talking about how you can do cleaning and pool operations and staffing, but it is more of a bigger picture about values and leadership and making the right decision, because unfortunately today being May 11th, we don't really have any more information about how to reopen your pool post-COVID than we thought we would back in April when I proposed this topic. So yes, the CDC came out on Friday with recommendations for how your pool, spray park, hot tub can operate during COVID if your local regulatory body has said that the pool can reopen. And in Canada, there's no pools that have reopened. There are no pools that will reopen, in my opinion, for at least another month to 2 months. Most swimming pools are in phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, depending on your province. So to draw it back to my session tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I wanted to talk. It started in one direction and now it's come to a different direction, which ultimately I think is more beneficial. But a lot of people right now are looking for the right answer when we don't really have a right answer. It's up to each person. I put this in our email, this weekend. It's really up to each person to make the professional decision that they can for their facility, for their city, their location, their state, their province, that they're comfortable with. And that's not to sound fuzzy and warm and subjective, but it's to say you're ultimately, as an aquatic facility manager, going to be responsible that your pool was open. And if you're not comfortable with that, you shouldn't be reopening. And if your boss wants you to reopen and you're not comfortable with that, I'm not suggesting you quit your job, but you do need to document very closely and clearly what your responsibilities are, what your reservations are, who's ultimately making the decision. So I had a director a couple of years ago. I hesitate to say games, but he played this game where he would make a decision and then tell me to do it. And I would respectfully disagree. And he would say, okay, so do it. And I'll say, yeah, I will implement the directives that you have given me. I disagree on the basis of A, B, and C in an email that I am writing to you. And then often that would either cause him to back down because he could see by reading my email that I was clearly making a declaration, that I was recording for perpetuity my concerns with the plan that he wanted me to implement. Or sometimes I would still have to do it, but at least I had documented for myself, cover your own whatever. I had documented for myself, these are the concerns, this is why I don't want to do it, and this is why it's a bad idea. And I've put it out there in public via email, and that's all you can do, right? It's important that we really consider all of the risks and concerns. And sometimes our directors, our rec managers, they're not aquatics people. They don't understand what our concerns are. So Jose is saying that she is a swimming and water safety ambassador for the Canadian Red Cross in New Brunswick, and their conference was canceled. So it's great that you can participate in the Saskatchewan and Manitoba one. I agree. I think it's going to be wonderful, and I'll be curious to know what the split is. So we've got Angela from Oakland, Maryland. We've got me from near Calgary, Jose from New Brunswick. I'll be curious to know at the end if they give us some statistics about the reach of this conference. I think it's really exciting. So thanks, everyone. That's kind of my week in a nutshell. Last sessions will be next week. Show notes, I am still working on show notes. You haven't missed them. Still working on show notes from last Wednesday. Trevor Sherwood, the expert witness. We had 2 hours and 12 minutes of content. I'm only about a quarter of the way into that. So if you click on the show notes for May 6th, they're partially updated, but it's not finished. Haven't started on the show notes yet for Friday, the equitable aquatics inventory. That will be coming up when I can get to it. Same with the show notes for today. I think people were watching very closely Maria Bella's session, so people will want to watch it again, but keep in mind it will be a few days before that is up. The PowerPoint slides are already posted on the show notes, so you can download those or share the link with anyone else who you think would find this information beneficial. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. If you need anything else, you know where to find me, LakeviewAquaticConsultants.com. You can follow us on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, just this close to 1,000 followers, which sounds like an arbitrary goal, but was actually my goal when I started the Instagram account 3 years ago in July. And I thought, oh, I'll get 1,000 people by December. And clearly, 3 years later, that is not the case. So I think I'm going to end it there, have a quick snack break, and then I'm going to hop on a meeting that I'm hosting shortly. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Good luck if you're opening your facility. Congratulations if you're off furlough. If you need anything, reach out. Facebook, Instagram, email. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Wednesday if you're joining us. Bye for now.